I never imagined I'd spend a night in jail for a crime I didn't commit. My name is Raymark Maverick, and I'm 33 years old. The woman who put me there was Charmaine, my wife of 6 years. She didn't just attack me that night. She beat me bloody, then called 911 and played the terrified victim so convincingly that the cops arrested me instead. For hours in that cell, I believed my life was over. That being a man meant nobody would believe my side of the story. My jaw clenched every time I replayed her performance for the officers. But Charmaine made one critical miscalculation. She underestimated my determination. What happened next wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about making absolutely certain she paid for every lie, every manipulation, every moment she thought she could destroy me and walk away clean. She wanted to teach me a lesson that night. Instead, she learned that some people refuse to be victims. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. I'd been married to Charmaine for 6 years, and for the last 3 of those years, I'd been living in what I can only describe as a war zone disguised as a marriage. That Thursday evening, I came home around 6:30 p.m. after spending the day troubleshooting server issues for a client. I was exhausted, looking forward to a quiet evening. The moment I walked through the door, I knew something was wrong. The house reeked of wine, and Charmaine was pacing in the living room, her movements jerky and aggressive. "Where the hell have you been?" she demanded, not even looking at me. "Work, same as every Thursday." I set my laptop bag down carefully. "Are you okay?" "Don't patronize me, Raymark." She spun toward me, her face flushed. "I saw the charge on our credit card. $60 at some restaurant downtown." "Who were you with?" I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. "That was lunch with my team. There were 5 of us. I have the receipt with everyone's names on it if you want to see." She snatched the phone from my hand and hurled it across the room. It hit the wall with a sickening crack, pieces of the screen scattering across the hardwood floor. "I don't want to see your fake receipts." Her voice climbed higher. "You think I'm stupid?" "I think you're drunk," I said, keeping my voice steady even as anger started building in my chest. "Again." Her face twisted with rage. "You smug bastard. Always so calm, so rational, like you're better than me." "I never said—" She grabbed the wine bottle from the coffee table and threw it at my head. I ducked, and it shattered against the wall behind me, red wine spraying everywhere like blood. Before I could react, she charged at me, her fists swinging wildly. One connected with my jaw, snapping my head to the side. "Charmaine, stop!" I grabbed her wrists, trying to restrain her without hurting her. "You need to calm down." "Don't touch me!" She wrenched one hand free and raked her nails down my face. I felt the sharp sting, felt warm blood trickling down my cheek. She was hitting me now with her other fist, pounding my chest, my shoulders, screaming incoherently. I released her wrists and backed away, hands up. "I'm not doing this. I'm leaving." "You're not going anywhere." She grabbed a framed photo from the shelf, our wedding photo ironically, and smashed it against my forearm. Glass shattered. Pain shot up my arm as shards cut into my skin. Something inside me snapped. Not into violence, I would never hit her, but into absolute, crystalline clarity. I was done. I straightened up, looked her directly in her wild, bloodshot eyes, and let every ounce of contempt I'd been swallowing for 3 years pour out of me. "You know what, Charmaine? You're pathetic. A pathetic, violent drunk who destroyed her own career and now spends every day trying to destroy me because you can't face the fact that you're a failure. You got fired because you were incompetent, and everyone at your company knew it. You lost your friends because you're a toxic nightmare to be around, and now you're about to lose your husband because you're too weak and too cowardly to take responsibility for your own life, so you take it out on me with your fists." Her face went pale, then flushed deep red. She was trembling. "How dare you? How dare I?" I laughed, harsh and cold. "I dare because I'm the one bleeding right now. Look at me. My face is torn open, my arm is cut to hell, and you're asking how I dare speak the truth? You're an abuser, Charmaine. You're no different than every piece of garbage husband who beats his wife, except you think being a woman gives you a free pass. Well, newsflash, it doesn't. You're a domestic abuser. Say it. That's what you are." Her expression changed. The rage melted away, replaced by something calculating and cold. She straightened up, wiped her eyes, and walked calmly to her phone on the kitchen counter. She picked it up, looked at me, and smiled. Then she dialed 911. "Please, I need help," she said, her voice suddenly small and frightened, nothing like the screaming harpy from 30 seconds ago. "My husband attacked me. He's been drinking and he's out of control. I'm scared. Please send someone quickly." I stared at her in disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" She kept her eyes locked on mine while talking to the dispatcher. "Yes, he's still here. He's yelling at me right now. Please hurry. I don't know what he'll do." "You lying, manipulative?" She hung up and tilted her head, that sick smile still on her face. "They'll be here in 5 minutes, maybe less." And when they arrive and see a big, strong man and a small, scared woman, who do you think they're going to believe? My fists clenched at my sides. "You just made the worst mistake of your entire life," I said quietly. "Did I?" She walked closer, reached up, and slapped herself across the face. Hard. Then again. A red mark bloomed on her cheek. "Now I have visible injuries too. Still think you're going to win this?" The sirens were already wailing in the distance, getting closer. 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt outside our house. 4 officers poured out, 3 men and 1 woman. Officers Derek Anderson and Franklin Stewart led the group, with officers Nisa Gupta and Sonny Ricketts following close behind. They took one look at the scene. Me, 6 feet tall, 190 pounds, broad-shouldered, with scratches on my face and blood on my arm. And Charmaine, 5'4", maybe 120 pounds, soaking wet, with tears streaming down her face and a red mark on her cheek. The optics were damning. "Officers, thank God you're here," Charmaine sobbed, her voice trembling. "He came home drunk and angry. I asked him about a charge on our credit card, just a simple question, and he exploded. He grabbed me by the throat, pushed me against the wall, and when I tried to defend myself, he hit me. Look at my face." "That's a complete lie," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm, even though rage was boiling through my veins. "She attacked me. She's been drinking. You can smell the wine, you can see the broken bottle. She threw it at my head, then she attacked me with her fists and her nails. Look at my face. Look at my arm. She did this." Officer Anderson stepped toward me, his hand resting near his service weapon. "Sir, I need you to remain calm and keep your hands where I can see them." "I am calm. I'm also telling you the truth. My phone has photos of my injuries time-stamped from before she called you. Check my blood alcohol. I haven't had a drop to drink. Check hers." Officer Gupta was already with Charmaine, examining her face and speaking in soothing tones. "Ma'am, did he hurt you anywhere else?" "My wrists," Charmaine whimpered, holding them out. "They were slightly red, from where I'd grabbed them to stop her from hitting me. He grabbed me so hard when I tried to get away, and my back. He shoved me. I had grabbed her wrists to stop her from attacking me, but the way she presented it made me look like the aggressor." "Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back," Officer Anderson commanded. "This is insane. She's lying. Check the evidence. Turn around, now." I complied, feeling the cold steel of handcuffs bite into my wrists. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. "You're under arrest for domestic violence battery," Anderson said. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As they led me to the patrol car, I glanced back at the house. Charmaine stood in the doorway with Officer Gupta, and for just a moment, when she thought no one was looking, the tears vanished and that cold, satisfied smile returned. She'd won this round. The county jail holding cells smelled like stale urine, body odor, and hopelessness. I sat on the cold metal bench, my head in my hands, trying to process the nightmare my life had become in the span of 2 hours. I'd been fingerprinted, photographed, stripped of my belt, my shoelaces, my dignity, treated like a violent criminal when I was the victim. The scratches on my face throbbed. The cuts on my arm had finally stopped bleeding, leaving dried blood crusted on my skin. Evidence. I had evidence. But apparently evidence didn't matter when the narrative fit society's preconceived notions. Big man bad, small woman victim. Around 2 a.m., they finally let me make my phone call. I called my brother, Edward. "Raymark? Jesus, what time is it? I need your help. I'm in jail." Silence. Then, "What?" I explained everything as quickly as I could. The attack, Charmaine's performance, the arrest. Edward listened without interrupting. "That psychotic bitch," he finally said. "Okay, I'm calling Daniel Clarkson. He's a lawyer, criminal defense. He's good. Expensive, but good. And I'm coming to bail you out. Ed, it's 2 in the morning. Shut up. You're my brother. I'll be there in an hour. I hung up and leaned back against the concrete wall. In my mind, I kept seeing that smile. Charmaine's cold, satisfied smile as they put me in handcuffs. She thought she'd destroyed me. She had no idea what was coming. Edward arrived with the bail money around 4 a.m. I was released with a court date 3 weeks out, a restraining order that prohibited me from going within 500 feet of my own house, and a domestic violence charge on my record. A domestic violence charge on my record for defending myself. In Edward's car, the weight of it finally hit me. She's going to destroy me. No, she's not, Edward said, his voice hard. We're going to destroy her first, and we're going to enjoy every second of it. I stayed at Edward's apartment that first night, barely sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smile. That cold, calculating smile as the handcuffs clicked shut around my wrists. Saturday morning, Edward drove me to meet Daniel Clarkson. The lawyer's office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel. Daniel himself was in his late 40s, sharp-featured with silver hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen every lie imaginable and knew exactly how to dismantle them. I showed him everything. The photos I'd taken of my injuries before the police arrived, time-stamped, undeniable. My torn and bloodied shirt that I'd refused to let them take. My cracked phone with those same photos still on it. Text messages from the previous months. Charmaine's drunken rants at 2 in the morning, her accusations, her threats. Has she been physically violent before? Daniel asked, his voice clinical. Multiple times. Thrown things, hit me, scratched me. I never reported it because I thought... I stopped, feeling stupid. I thought it would get better. I thought if I was patient, if I was understanding, she'd work through whatever she was going through. They never work through it, Daniel said, his tone cold. Abusers escalate, and when they feel control slipping away, they project. She attacked you, then made herself the victim. Classic Darvo, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Can we beat this? We can, but more than that, we're going to bury her. Daniel leaned forward. I need you to document everything. Every witness who's seen her behavior, every piece of evidence that proves her pattern of abuse, every financial record showing her drinking expenses. We're not playing defense, we're going scorched earth. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into building an airtight case. I contacted our neighbors, Anton and Lana Stewart. They lived close enough to share a wall with us, and they'd heard plenty. Anton met me at a coffee shop, uncomfortable, but willing. I've heard her screaming through the walls more times than I can count, he said. Heard things breaking. Called the cops twice myself. Noise complaints. Both times the officers wrote it up as a verbal dispute. Lana corroborated everything. I saw you with a black eye last year, she told me. You said you walked into a cabinet door, but I didn't believe it then and I don't believe it now. I reached out to Carmen Garcia, one of Charmaine's former colleagues from before she was fired. Carmen was hesitant at first, worried about getting involved. But when I explained what Charmaine had done, the attack, the lies, the arrest, something shifted in her expression. She had a drinking problem even at work, Carmen said. She'd come in hungover, sometimes still drunk. She threw a stapler at another coworker during a meeting. That's part of why they let her go, not just incompetence, but her temper. I pulled our credit card statements. $400 to $500 every month on alcohol purchases. 3 years of escalating expenses at liquor stores and wine shops. I retrieved medical records from 14 months ago when I'd gone to urgent care for a head wound that required 6 stitches. I'd lied then, said I'd slipped and hit the corner of the coffee table. The lie haunted me now, but Daniel said we could reframe it. Evidence of my fear, evidence of her control. Fear makes victims lie to protect their abusers, Daniel explained. That's actually helpful to our case. Most damning of all, Daniel filed a motion to subpoena Charmaine's text messages and phone records. When the results came back, we found pure gold. Daniel called me into his office, his eyes gleaming with something that looked like predatory satisfaction. He slid a printed text message across his desk. Read that. It was from Charmaine to her friend Annalie Wilson. Sent at 6:15 p.m. on the night of the incident. The text read, "About to teach Raymark a lesson he won't forget. He thinks he can talk to me like that? He's going to regret every word. I'll make sure of it." I stared at it, my heart pounding. This was sent at 6:15? Yes, the 911 call was placed at 6:47 p.m. That's 32 minutes later. This is premeditation. This is a smoking gun. Daniel said, and his smile was absolutely merciless. She literally documented her plan to hurt you, then she followed through and framed you for it. This isn't just assault, this is conspiracy, filing a false police report, perjury. We're not just beating the charges against you, we're putting her in prison. 3 weeks after my arrest, I sat beside Daniel in the courtroom, my stomach twisted in knots despite his confidence. The preliminary hearing would determine whether there was enough evidence to proceed with charges against me, or whether the prosecutor would see through Charmaine's lies. Charmaine entered with her attorney, Vince Harris, a middle-aged man with the look of someone who relied on emotional manipulation rather than facts. She wore a conservative navy dress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup except for some concealer that made her look pale and vulnerable. The performance continued. Prosecutor Eva Gupta called Charmaine to the stand first. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and I felt sick knowing what was about to come out of her mouth. Gupta walked her through her version of events, the same lies she'd told the police, now repeated under oath with additional embellishments. She described being terrified when I allegedly grabbed her by the throat. She testified that I'd been drinking, that I'd accused her of spending too much money, that I'd shoved her against the wall when she tried to defend herself. She cried at all the right moments. Her voice quavered when she described being afraid to leave because I'd blocked the door. She spoke softly about previous incidents where I'd allegedly threatened her, incidents that never happened. It was a masterclass in manipulation. If I hadn't lived the truth, I might have believed her myself. When Daniel's turn came for cross-examination, he stood slowly, deliberately, like a predator who'd spotted wounded prey. Ms. Maverick, you testified that my client grabbed you by the throat and threatened you. Is that correct? Yes, Charmaine said softly. And you were, in your words, terrified for your life? I was. Yet you didn't attempt to leave the house. I couldn't. He was blocking the door. But you were able to reach your phone to call 911? Yes. So you had mobility. You could move around the room, access objects? Charmaine hesitated. Yes, but I was scared. Scared enough to call 911, but not scared enough to run to your neighbor's house? Daniel's voice sharpened. Your neighbors, the Stewarts, live 20 feet away. You've run to their house before during arguments, haven't you? I don't remember. You don't remember? Because according to police reports from April and July of last year, officers responded to noise complaints from the Stewarts about you screaming and throwing objects. Does that refresh your memory? Vince Harris objected, but Judge Bella Robinson overruled it. And before calling 911, Daniel continued, pulling out a printed text message, you sent a text to your friend Annalie Wilson at 6:15 p.m. The text reads, and I quote, "About to teach Raymark a lesson he won't forget. He thinks he can talk to me like that? He's going to regret every word. I'll make sure of it." Does that sound like someone in fear for her life? The color drained from Charmaine's face. That's out of context. Out of context? You sent that text at 6:15 p.m. The 911 call was placed at 6:47 p.m. That's 32 minutes later. What lesson were you teaching my client, Ms. Maverick? I was upset. You were upset, so you decided to teach him a lesson? And what was that lesson? Charmaine's hands trembled on the witness stand rail. Ms. Maverick, how many times have you physically struck my client during your marriage? You've never hit him? Not once? Daniel pulled out medical records and photos. Then, how do you explain this emergency room visit from 14 months ago where Mr. Maverick received 6 stitches for a head laceration? The intake notes indicate the injury occurred during a domestic incident, though Mr. Maverick later claimed he slipped. Were you present when this injury occurred? He did slip. He slipped onto a coffee table. But here's a text message you sent to Carmen Garcia the next day. Daniel held up another printout. Hit Raymark with a wine bottle last night during a fight. He deserved it. Dramatic baby went to the ER. Did you write that? The courtroom went silent. Even Judge Robinson leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Charmaine's mouth opened and closed. That was a joke. A joke. You joked about hitting your husband with a wine bottle hard enough to require medical attention? I didn't mean. Judge Robinson removed her reading glasses. Ms. Maverick, did you throw a wine bottle at your husband on the night of the alleged assault? Charmaine looked at her lawyer, then at the judge, then at me. Tears streamed down her face now, not the calculated tears from before, but panic tears. She'd been caught, and she knew it. "I want to speak to my attorney," she whispered. After the preliminary hearing, Daniel and I walked out into the courthouse hallway. My legs felt unsteady, relief and vindication mixing with residual anger. Charmaine had crumbled on the stand. Everyone in that courtroom had seen the truth. Prosecutor Ivor Gupta approached us near the exit, his expression uncomfortable but resolute. "Mr. Clarkson," he said, nodding at Daniel, "your client has compelling evidence, very compelling. I'm going to recommend the charges be dropped." Relief flooded through me so intensely I thought my knees might buckle. I'd known the evidence was strong, but hearing it from the prosecutor himself felt like oxygen after drowning. Daniel shook Gupta's hand. "Appreciated, and we'll be filing charges against Mrs. Maverick for assault, battery, filing a false police report, and perjury." Gupta nodded grimly. I'd expect nothing less, and frankly, she deserves it. 3 days later, the charges against me were formally dismissed. The local news ran a brief story, not front page, but public enough. Man falsely accused of domestic violence, charges dropped after evidence proves wife's abuse. Seeing those words in print felt surreal. Vindication in black and white. But we weren't done. Not even close. Daniel filed criminal charges against Charmaine for everything Gupta had mentioned. Then he went further, filing a massive civil lawsuit for defamation, emotional distress, malicious prosecution, and loss of income. We weren't just looking for justice. We were looking to financially destroy her. "She tried to put you in prison," Daniel said flatly. "She gets everything that's coming to her." Charmaine started calling me, constantly. I never answered, but she left voicemails, dozens of them. They alternated between sobbing apologies and screaming threats. "Raymark, please, I'm so sorry. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Please drop the charges. I'm begging you." Then, hours later, "You're ruining my life. I'll make you pay for this, you bastard. You think you've won? You haven't won anything." I saved every single one and sent them to Daniel. Vince Harris, Charmaine's attorney, tried to negotiate a plea deal. Daniel's response was brutal. "Your client tried to destroy an innocent man's life and send him to prison. We're not negotiating anything. She goes to trial and she goes to prison." The criminal trial was set for 4 months away. In the meantime, I filed for divorce. I wanted Charmaine legally severed from my life. Permanently, completely, irrevocably. No more shared last name, no more legal ties, nothing. I moved into a new apartment across town, a clean, modern space with big windows and none of the memories that haunted our old house. It felt like a fresh start, like I was rebuilding from the ground up. I threw myself into work. Maybe it was a coping mechanism. Maybe it was just channeling all that rage and determination into something productive. But I earned a commendation from my manager for exceptional performance on a critical client project. My life wasn't falling apart. It was getting stronger. And then I met Glaza. Glaza Brown was a pediatric nurse Edward introduced me to at a cookout about 2 months after the preliminary hearing. She was warm, funny, grounded, refreshingly drama-free. We started talking, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe around someone. We took things slowly. I was honest about what I was going through, and she was patient and supportive without being overbearing. One evening over dinner at a quiet Italian place downtown, Glaza reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're a good man who got dealt a terrible hand," she said. "I'm glad you're fighting back. Some people would have just accepted it." "I couldn't," I said. "If I'd accepted it, she'd do it to someone else someday. Women like Charmaine need to face consequences, or they never stop." Glaza's eyes held mine. "Then I'm here to support you until it's over." Having her in my corner made everything more bearable. The criminal trial began on a gray morning in early March. I'd expected a standard courtroom, half empty, a few court watchers, maybe a reporter if we were lucky. Instead, the gallery was packed. Apparently, false accusation cases drew public interest, especially when the roles were reversed from what people expected. I sat in the front row with Daniel, my hands folded in my lap, my jaw tight. Across the aisle, Charmaine sat with Vince Harris. She looked defeated already, shoulders hunched, eyes red-rimmed from crying or lack of sleep or both. Part of me almost felt sorry for her, almost. Then I remembered the cold smile she'd given me as the cops led me away in handcuffs, and that flicker of sympathy died instantly. The prosecution called witness after witness, building a methodical, devastating case. Anton and Lana Stewart testified about the multiple incidents over the years. Hearing Charmaine scream through the walls, the sound of objects being thrown, the times they'd called the police themselves for noise complaints. Lana described seeing me with visible injuries more than once. A black eye I'd blamed on a cabinet door, scratches on my neck I'd brushed off as yard work. He always had an excuse, Lana said quietly. But we knew. We knew something wasn't right. Carmen Garcia took the stand and testified about Charmaine's drinking problem at work, the volatility that made everyone walk on eggshells around her. She described the incident where Charmaine had thrown a stapler at a colleague during a meeting, screaming that everyone was conspiring against her. She was fired 2 weeks later, Carmen said, not because of office politics, because she was incompetent and dangerous. The emergency room doctor who'd treated my head injury testified about the 6 stitches he'd put in my scalp, the suspicious circumstances I'd described, the evasive answers I'd given when he'd asked direct questions about how it happened. In my professional opinion, the doctor said, the patient's injuries were consistent with being struck by a blunt object, not with slipping and falling. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. My voice was steady. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I told my story calmly, clearly, without dramatization. I described 3 years of walking on eggshells, of being hit and berated, of trying to keep the peace because I loved her and thought she'd get better. I described the escalation after she lost her job, the drinking, the rage that came out of nowhere and wouldn't stop. And I described that night. She threw a wine bottle at my head, I said. When I ducked, she came at me with her fists. She scratched my face until I was bleeding. She smashed a framed photo against my arm, cutting me with the glass. And when I finally told her the truth, that she was an abuser, that she was destroying both our lives, she decided to destroy mine completely. She called 911 and lied. She told them I'd attacked her. She told them I was drunk and out of control. Then she slapped herself in the face twice to create injuries that would back up her story. I looked directly at the jury. She told me I'd never win. She told me no one would believe a man claiming abuse from a woman. And for a while she was right. The police saw a big man and a small woman and made their assumptions. But the truth doesn't care about optics. The truth is that she's a violent abuser who tried to weaponize the justice system against me when I finally stood up to her. Vince Harris's cross-examination was pathetic. He tried to suggest I'd provoked her, that I'd said things I knew would upset her, that maybe I'd been emotionally abusive, even if I hadn't been physically violent. But the evidence was overwhelming. The premeditated text message to Annalee, the pattern of violence documented by neighbors, colleagues, medical professionals, the lies under oath at the preliminary hearing. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. When they filed back into the courtroom, I felt my heart hammering against my ribs. Daniel reached over and squeezed my shoulder once, brief, reassuring. The foreperson stood. We find the defendant, Charmaine Maverick, guilty on all counts. Charmaine's face crumpled. The color drained from her skin, her mouth opened in a silent gasp, and for just a moment, she turned and looked at me. Her eyes were full of hatred and despair, pure, concentrated venom mixed with the dawning realization that she'd lost everything. Then she broke down completely, sobbing into her hands, while Vince tried uselessly to comfort her. She'd gambled everything on her lies being believed. She'd lost. 2 weeks after the guilty verdict, I sat in that same courtroom for Charmaine's sentencing hearing. The atmosphere felt different now, heavier, more final. This wasn't about proving guilt anymore. This was about consequences. Charmaine sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. Vince Harris sat beside her, flipping through papers with the air of a man who knew he'd already lost. Judge Bella Robinson entered, and we all stood. When she sat, her eyes went directly to Charmaine, and the contempt on her face was unmistakable. Ms. Maverick, Judge Robinson began, her voice cold and precise. You didn't just assault your husband. You attempted to destroy his life by weaponizing law enforcement and the judicial system. You committed perjury under oath. You filed false police reports. And in doing so, you undermined the credibility of real domestic violence victims, women who desperately need the protections you exploited for your own vindictive purposes. Charmaine's shoulders shook. She was crying again, but Judge Robinson didn't pause. Your actions are reprehensible and deserve severe punishment. The court sentences you to 2 years in county jail, followed by 3 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution to Mr. Maverick for his legal fees, medical expenses, lost wages, and emotional distress. That restitution totals $87,000. I felt Daniel's hand on my arm. Brief, satisfied. $87,000. It was a start. Judge Robinson continued, "You will have no contact with Mr. Maverick during or after your sentence. Any violation of this order will result in additional criminal charges. Do you understand?" Charmaine nodded, unable to speak through her sobs. "This court is adjourned." As they led Charmaine away in handcuffs, she looked back at me once. The hatred was still there, but it was buried under something else now. Defeat. Complete, total defeat. Outside the courtroom, Daniel turned to me. "That's not the end of it. The civil suit is still pending. Defamation, malicious prosecution, emotional distress. We're going for maximum damages. She's going to pay for this for the rest of her life." "Good," I said, and I meant it. 6 months passed. Charmaine had served 8 months of her jail sentence by the time the civil trial began. They brought her to the courtroom in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, flanked by 2 bailiffs. She looked haggard. Her hair was dull and limp, her face gaunt, dark circles under her eyes. Prison had aged her years. I felt nothing looking at her. No pity, no satisfaction, just cold indifference. Daniel presented overwhelming evidence of every way Charmaine's lies had damaged my life. The arrest record that showed up on background checks. The promotion I'd lost because my employer saw domestic violence arrest and decided I wasn't leadership material, never mind that the charges were dropped. The time I'd lost at work dealing with court dates and legal meetings, the therapy bills from processing the trauma of being falsely accused and jailed. He presented character witnesses who testified about the damage to my reputation in our social circles. People who'd heard Charmaine's version of events and believed it, who'd looked at me differently, treated me differently, until the truth came out. Daniel stood before the jury in his closing argument and said, "Charmaine Maverick tried to send an innocent man to prison. She weaponized the justice system against him. She destroyed his reputation, his career prospects, his mental health. And she did it deliberately, with premeditation, as evidenced by her own text messages. The damages we're seeking, $320,000, represent a fraction of the harm she caused. But it sends a message. You cannot destroy someone's life with lies and walk away clean." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreperson read the verdict. "We award the plaintiff, Raymark Maverick, $320,000 in compensatory and punitive damages." $320,000. Charmaine didn't have that kind of money. She'd never have that kind of money. The judgment would follow her for decades, garnishing her wages, destroying her credit, hanging over her head like a sword that would never fall but never go away either. Daniel leaned over as the judge dismissed the jury. "It's public record now. Anyone who Googles her name will find it. Convicted domestic abuser, perjurer, false accuser who tried to destroy her husband's life. That follows her forever." I nodded slowly. Good. Because it wasn't just about the money. It was about the truth being permanent, inescapable, carved into the public record where she could never hide from it. She'd tried to erase me. Instead, I'd made sure the world would never forget what she was. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks after the civil trial. I got the house. Charmaine had no way to keep it from jail anyway, and frankly, the court wasn't inclined to give her anything after what she'd done. I sold it immediately. Didn't even hesitate. That house held nothing but bad memories. 3 years of walking on eggshells, of being hit and screamed at, of trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. I wanted nothing to do with it. The proceeds paid off the last of my legal debts and went into savings, an investment in my future, a future with Glaza. Charmaine got nothing. No alimony, no assets, no sympathy. The court had seen exactly who she was, and they treated her accordingly. Vince Harris made one last pathetic attempt to negotiate some kind of settlement. He called Daniel, his voice heavy with what I'm sure he thought sounded like concern. "My client will be homeless when she's released. Surely Mr. Maverick can show some compassion." Daniel cut him off. "Your client should have thought about that before she tried to send an innocent man to prison. The answer is no. It will always be no." That was the end of it. 18 months after that nightmare began, my life looked completely different. I'd been promoted at work, senior IT consultant with a team under me and a salary that finally reflected my experience. My manager told me the promotion was overdue, that I'd earned it through performance and dedication. I didn't tell him it also felt like validation, like proof that Charmaine hadn't destroyed my career after all. Glazer and I had moved in together 6 months earlier. A bright, spacious apartment in a good neighborhood, the kind of place that felt like home the moment we walked through the door. We'd furnished it together, picked out paint colors together, built something that was ours. Living with her was nothing like living with Charmaine. There were no eggshells to walk on, no sudden explosions of rage, no accusations or manipulation, just mutual respect, trust, and genuine affection. The kind of relationship I'd forgotten was even possible. One evening, Edward came over for dinner. Glazer had made lasagna. She was an incredible cook, and the three of us sat around the table talking and laughing like normal people living normal lives. It felt surreal sometimes. Good surreal. Edward raised his beer. To justice. I raised mine, met his eyes. To justice, and to never looking back. We drank, and I meant every word. Through mutual acquaintances, people who'd known both me and Charmaine during our marriage, I'd heard updates about her situation. She'd been released from jail after serving 16 months. Good behavior, apparently, though I doubted she'd actually changed. More likely, she'd just learned to play the role they wanted to see. She was working at a call center now. Minimum wage, soul-crushing work fielding complaints from angry customers 8 hours a day. She lived in a tiny apartment in a rough neighborhood, the kind of place where you heard sirens every night and kept your door double-locked. And she was drowning in debt. The restitution and civil judgment, over $400,000 combined, would follow her for the rest of her life. She made minimum payments when she could, but the interest kept piling up. She'd be paying it off for the next 20 years, maybe longer. She'd lost everything: her freedom, her reputation, her financial stability, her social circle. Everyone who'd known us both knew the truth now, knew she was a convicted domestic abuser, a perjurer, a woman who'd tried to destroy her husband's life with lies. Some people probably felt sorry for her. I wasn't one of them. Did I feel bad? Not for a second. She'd tried to destroy me. She'd attacked me, lied about me, tried to send me to prison for crimes she committed. She'd weaponized domestic violence resources meant to protect real victims. She'd shown no remorse, no empathy, no acknowledgement of her actions until she faced consequences. She got exactly what she deserved. And me? I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. I had a partner who loved and respected me, a career that was thriving, a future that looked bright instead of terrifying. I'd fought back, and I'd won. People sometimes ask me if I went too far, if I should have shown mercy, accepted a plea deal, let some things go. My answer is always the same: absolutely not. Charmaine didn't just hit me. She tried to obliterate my entire existence. She tried to turn me into a convicted domestic abuser, destroy my career, poison every relationship I had, and send me to prison for crimes she committed. If I hadn't fought back with everything I had, I'd be the one in jail right now. I'd be the one with a criminal record. I'd be the one whose life was destroyed. Instead, she's paying off over $400,000 in judgments and restitution. She'll be paying for the next 20 years, maybe longer. She works a dead-end job with no prospects, no future, no hope of climbing out of the hole she dug for herself. She has no friends left. Everyone knows what she did. Last I heard, she tried to move to a different state to start fresh. Arizona, I think. Thought she could leave it all behind and reinvent herself somewhere new. But the civil judgment followed her. It's not something you can outrun by crossing state lines. The garnishment started up again within weeks of her new job. She can't escape it. She can't escape the consequences of her choices, no matter how far she runs. And you know what? Good. As for me, Glazer and I got engaged last month. I proposed on a Saturday evening at the place where we had our first date, a quiet Italian restaurant with candles on the tables and soft music playing in the background. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just the two of us, and a question I already knew the answer to. She said yes before I even finished asking. We're planning a small wedding next spring, maybe 30 people, close friends and family, somewhere outdoors if the weather cooperates. We're talking about buying a house afterward, something with a yard and enough space to grow. Maybe starting a family down the road when we're ready. It feels like a life I didn't think I'd get to have. After everything with Charmaine, I'd started to believe that happiness wasn't meant for me, that relationships were just battlefields where someone always got hurt. Glazer proved me wrong. I'm in therapy now, have been for about 8 months. Working through the trauma, unpacking the years of abuse I endured and normalized because I thought that's what love looked like. It's hard work. Some sessions leave me exhausted, drained, wondering if I'll ever fully shake the hypervigilance that comes from living in a war zone disguised as a marriage. But every day gets a little easier. And every time I look at Glaza, this incredible woman who treats me with kindness and respect, who supports me without trying to control me, who builds me up instead of tearing me down, I'm reminded that I made the right choice. I didn't just defend myself. I took back my life. I built something better. Charmaine wanted to teach me a lesson that night. She wanted to show me that she had all the power, that she could destroy me with a phone call and a few well-placed lies, that being a man meant I'd never be believed. Instead, she learned one. Some people refuse to be victims, and when you try to destroy them, they make absolutely certain you never forget it. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.